Welcome to Crime Beat. I'm Anthony Robart. Tonight, a young woman goes on break in the middle of her workday. Little did she or anyone know she would never return.
The offender walks directly towards her, and just off camera, the offense occurs. The interaction was so quick that no one was aware that a violent crime had just occurred. Before everybody processed this unnatural act, she was gone.
I got a phone call from my bigger sister saying that they're going to the hospital, Rosemary. She was stabbed. Then they said, oh, there was a suspect, but there was a girl. They don't think that she knew her.
There was no interaction between the two. There was no words exchanged, no insults, no provocation, nothing. We could find no prior connection to these two people.
Why she engaged in that? That's the million-dollar question.
Either this is a very cold, calculated individual, or there's something wrong.
Here now is Marianne Demain with the senseless killing of Rosemarie Junor.
Below Toronto's downtown core lies an elaborate underground concourse known as the Path.
It's right downtown, middle of the financial district, very busy hub for walking, people shopping, as well as many restaurants, coffee shops, and that.
On any given day, more than 200,000 busy commuters, residents, and tourists travel through the 30-kilometer labyrinth uneventfully. But on December 11th, 2015, one young woman was not so lucky.
At around 3 Friday afternoon, a woman in her late 20s is shopping inside this drugstore in Toronto's underground concourse when, according to police, a complete stranger allegedly walks up to her and stabs her.
Within 3 hours, I've spoken to the detectives on the scene. They give me an update as to the general view of the scene, some of the evidence we have, and the condition of our victim.
The victim was alive, but fighting for her life, which is why homicide detective Sean Mahoney got a call.
No family wants to have a person from the homicide squad come into the hospital to talk to them while they're praying and hoping that their loved one survives. We can't take over at that situation, so we start to engage with the officers that are at the scene just so that we have input into some of the evidence gathering and how they conduct themselves, thinking of eventually, the prosecution in court. I knew we were dealing with numerous witnesses, but I was also aware that this is the financial area of the city, that there would be an extensive camera system in any of the establishments there, as well as the pass system. So my direction at that point was to obtain the evidence of video surveillance from various vantage points. Everything's about the time. Evidence disappears fairly quickly. We want to think about forensic evidence, stuff that can disappear over time. We also want to engage witnesses there. Memory of people go fairly quickly, and we want to be able to talk to them, get their information as fresh as possible.
As police were trying to establish who their suspect was, the family of the victim, 28-year-old Rosemarie Junor, was notified.
I got a phone call from my bigger sister saying that they're going to the hospital. So I'm like, for what? Rosemary. Something happened to her. So I was like, well, what happened? Asking the questions. No one knew exactly what had happened. So I just picked myself up, left from Brampton, my son, and we drove all the way to the downtown, to the hospital. When we reached the hospital, we were all in the waiting room. Myself, my big sister, and her friend. Her husband was there after. And they said she was in the operating room. We were just all waiting there for like a couple hours well. Later on, when the surgery was done, that's when the police came and they explained to us what had happened. They said that she was stabbed. They didn't say exactly where she was stabbed. Then they said, oh, there was a suspect, but there was a girl. I looked at him and I looked at my brother and I'm like, a girl? The police did make it clearly that they don't think that she knew her.
When you hear that piece of information, that this was a stranger to your sister, what are you thinking at that point?
To be honest, I was blank. I was totally lost. I don't know what to say. Because you're kind of confused, right? You're baffled, and you're like, well, why would somebody do that? Or what happened exactly? And you're waiting to get the answers. And it was like, as I said, blank.
As the family tried to process the randomness of it all, more details emerged.
I'm fortunate that I was able to see a video surveillance that was actually in the Shoppers Drug Mart. What we see is that the offender walked into the Shoppers Drug Mart, and it's a typical layout of your drugstore. There's the cosmetic area, there's medical supplies. As you walk towards the back of the drugstore, that's where the pharmaceutical area is. On the cameras also is our victim. She is on her cell phone, and she is obviously speaking to someone and browsing the different aisles. The offender walks directly towards her, and just off camera, the offense occurs. At that time, we know that she's been stabbed directly in the chest one time.
24 seconds. That's all it took.
You can see that she clutches her chest. She still has presence of mind to hold her cell phone, and she's talking to the person on the phone, but she's also yelling out for help from the staff at the store. They see that she sustained a chest wound that was bleeding profusely, and being somewhat medically trained, they apply first aid right off the bat.
Just as quickly, the suspect was gone.
The offender then walks away down a different aisle out of the store, but not before depositing the weapon in a display in the middle of the aisle of one of the cosmetic areas.
Did anyone try to run after the suspect?
I think the interaction was so quick and so abnormal for that area that no one was aware that a violent crime had just occurred, and the way the offender appeared, I don't think you would say this person is trouble. This is someone we need to watch. Before everybody processed this unnatural act, she was gone.
Equally shocking was the weapon she'd used, a simple paring knife.
You do not see her walking into the store with a knife blade or a knife out. She is walking in, carrying her purse, and at some point she removes the weapon from a concealed spot on her person and used it.
Were there any words exchanged between the suspect and the victim?
None. That's also the troubling part of it. There was no interaction between the two. There was no words exchanged, no insults, no provocation, nothing. She looked like a person that would be in the business area. She was wearing a skirt, business jacket. She looked appropriately attired for a person in the financial community. She walks into the store, really no facial expression, neutral. And then as she walks out of the store, it's that same neutral expression. Her overall appearance doesn't draw attention to her. It's like anybody you would pass every day in that area.
Which made it all the more tragic for the Junor family.
I do have pictures of her in the hospital bed with the tubes all up her nose and her mouth, and her eyes were like blinking all the time. Like her eyes were closed, but you could see her, it's like she's trying to open it, but it's not opening. My sister and my mother, the two of them were like, they were losing it, because to see that, that's how she was. And we didn't have any kind of information or nothing on where she's gonna live, like what's gonna happen. The bleeding was still going on, but I mean, they kind of like stopped the majority of the bleeding, but it was just crazy.
There is no indication that this individual had been involved in a violent struggle prior to her departing there. There was no witnesses that said, I saw a woman screaming, carrying on, disheveled, something you might see after this horrendous act had occurred.
What does that tell you as an investigator?
You have to keep an open mind. Either this is a very cold, calculated individual, or there's something wrong.
Police may not have had a motive, but they did have an image.
They take the immediate step to release a photo of her so that we can find out who she is, find out what she's about, and most importantly, where she is, so that we can stop any potential future threat.
Coming up, in a large city where people can disappear easily, police wait for leads. And Rosemarie's condition takes a turn. Welcome back to Crime Beat. As Rosemary's family prays that she'll survive, police learn who their suspect is. We now return to Marianne Domain and the senseless killing of Rosemarie Junor.
I was angry. I was very much angry, yeah. For anybody else, it would be the same thing. Whether it's a daughter or a son, mother, brother, sister, father, anything that happened like that, you'll feel rage. But at the time being, I couldn't do anything because we can't take the law into our own hands. We just have for the police to do their job.
We look at the victim's employment, what they do, what interactions they would have, and we also look at the offender, what their employment, what their position is, and see if there's any mutual friends, anything like that that would give us a clue as to why on that day this happened. And throughout it, the biggest puzzling, worst part of it is we could find no prior connection to these two people.
We just all hope that and pray that, it would change, because sometimes people go into a coma for 6 months, 6 years, and we thought, well, this can happen, with a miracle, she can come back to us. Nothing changed. The doctors were saying that due to the fact that she lost a lot of blood and because of the lack of oxygen towards her brain, she don't know nothing. Like she was just like a vegetable at that time.
It didn't seem fair. Rosemary was in the prime of her life, a newlywed who'd gotten married just 4 months earlier.
Oh, I was very happy. My baby sister is being led away by somebody else now. It was heartbroken, but it was happy feelings. To know that she's going to be safe in someone's hands still instead of us, it was a joyful moment for us, for me especially.
Originally from Trinidad, Rosemary was the youngest of 4 siblings.
My mom had her like 10 years apart from my third sibling. I was helping her out, carrying her to school, to the daycare, picking her back up, bringing her back home, giving her lunch. That's where my bond got very close with her at that time. Until we came to Canada, then it was like a different kind of a bond. She was more or less like me. She doesn't like you, she doesn't like you. She would talk to you as a normal person, laughing, making jokes. Very friendly, very kind, loving and caring. She loved soccer. She loved playing soccer and music. She loved calypso music. That's kind of like happiness for her.
That personality radiated on her wedding day.
She was amazing. She was beautiful. There's no words to say anything else. That she was so excited and happy that she just wanted everything to be perfect.
She and her husband had just bought a new home where they had hoped to start a family very soon.
She planned everything out, and I was happy about that. Very much happy because, she took it upon herself to say, this is what I'm going to do. And whatever she put her mind to do something, she does it.
As the family kept vigil by her bedside, there was a development.
Police have arrested a woman wanted in connection with a vicious stabbing in the downtown core. Security cameras in the underground path system caught images of 40-year-old Rohini Bisasar at the Shoppers Drug Mart at Wellesley and Bay on Friday.
Police were able to go to her residence, and at that time they were able to effect an arrest. It was non-confrontational, very muted, very straightforward. They took her into custody, and at that time kept the residence as also a crime scene for them to do a search warrant to establish some evidence to connect the offense to her.
Bisasar will appear in court tomorrow facing charges of attempted murder, aggravated assault, and carrying a concealed weapon.
Oh, we're relieved. We're just waiting for answers now. We're happy that, okay, right away they got the person, but we were looking for answers.
28-year-old Rosemarie Junor died from stab wounds last night.
It was hard. It was very, very hard. We all sat and, we just looked at her just going. And I won't hate it on my own enemy for that to happen to them, that their child or their daughter or a close one just goes just like that. It was the biggest viewing the funeral home said they ever had. They had to even call in police to block the road because there was so much people and so much traffic. And then the funeral, the same thing too, right? It was so big, it was like the church was full. And it was just amazing to see that a lot of people took it to heart that this could happen to anybody. And it was a touching story too.
Rohini Bisasar back in court today, formally facing a charge of second-degree murder.
And the penalty for that potentially is no parole for 10 to 25 years on a sliding scale. Attempt murder had no minimum, so we've kind of gone from a 1 to a 10 in terms of severity.
At that time, I had a conversation with her. I'm required to tell her what the charges are, inform her of her rights to speak to a lawyer. She did not seem interested in what I had to say about the charges. Her concern was what was going on in her head and issues with nanotechnology. She wanted to know if I was from the federal government and whether I can put her in touch with people that would remove the technology that was invading her body.
After the break, as Rohini Bisasar heads to court, investigators look into her shocking claims. Welcome back to Crime Beat. As investigators delve into Rohini's past, they discover a woman who's dealing with more than murder charges. We now return to Marianne Demain and the senseless killing of Rosemarie Junor.
While news of the alleged attack has rattled people in the busy financial district, police say Bisasar is known to spend time there.
For those who knew Rohini Bisasar, nothing about the attack made sense.
She has quite an impressive resume, and she has a lot of friends, and people have commented that they're shocked and taken aback that this is not her demeanor.
She's a very gentle individual, a very calm individual, despite what has been alleged. What has been alleged is extremely, with a capital E, out of character for her.
They both went to the Schulich School of Business, where she received her MBA.
She's a highly educated person. She's a professional career woman. She's a sophisticated individual. I don't know what has happened.
She was capable. She was kind and certainly nonviolent and non-aggressive. She was born in Guyana, moved to Canada when she was a child. She was an overachiever when it came to her education. Has multiple degrees and graduate degrees. She held a job for a while doing work associated with her degrees, and she took a lot of pride in her education and a lot of pride in who she was as a person.
But something was going on inside this outwardly confident woman, a fact that became evident as she was interviewed by police and her lawyer.
Here is an individual that's being told they're being charged with murder, and that didn't seem to faze her. It seemed to be just a side issue for what was concerning her. I was in her presence, and the conversation was always about her and what I could do to help her about the technology that was invading her body.
She had persecutory delusions where she felt that people were after her and were harming her using implants and all these different means. So having a random person show up and say that they're a lawyer and they want to understand what's going on and to get to know her is a very difficult thing for a person in that circumstance to accept and to believe that that person is who they say that they are and that they are there for the reasons that they say that they're there. And so Ms. Bisasar was very reticent to accept that I was who I was. It was even hard for her to accept the fact that I was actually there, because she couldn't trust whether what she was seeing was real. It took quite a number of visits before I was able to get her to trust me at all.
Over that time, he learned she had a history of mental illness.
Ms. Bisasar did have some previous interactions with the mental health system. She had been previously hospitalized. She had been diagnosed with a delusional disorder not otherwise specified and prescribed some treatment.
When someone's not well enough to recognize their condition worsening and take steps to stay healthy, it's called lack of insight.
She was released into the community, and having no insight into her condition, did not continue the treatment because she did not believe that she was unwell. As a result of that, she continued to deteriorate and got worse and worse to the point where her delusions became so severe that she was having auditory hallucinations, visual hallucinations, somatic hallucinations, somatic delusions, where you feel that your body is being moved not by your own control. So she had all three, and it was very problematic. It was very torturous for her. The person that I was introduced to, she was mutilating her own skin, thinking that she was trying to pull implants out from under her skin. She was harming herself physically. I said to myself, what is going on with this person? What does she need in this moment in order to stand trial? Because it wasn't even about trying to get Ms. Possessor off of the charges. The goal was to get her in front of a court in a meaningful way.
Justice can be served, and it will be served. I could say I'm angry, yes, because I did lose my sister because of it.
For me, being a part of the Department of Psychiatry, when someone got that mental illness, we need treatment.
I attended court with Ms. Possessor on a couple of occasions, and I advised the court that I believed that there were concerns about fitness, at which point the court ordered that Ms. Possessor would be assessed with respect to fitness by a forensic psychiatrist.
So in our society, there's an expectation that if you're going to be facing any charges in court, that you need to be there physically, for the obvious reasons that you need to be able to face your accuser in front of the trier of the fact. So you can conduct a defense. You also need to be there mentally. You need to be able to identify what you're charged with. If you have a lawyer, you need to know what your lawyer is there to do. You also need to know what the court officers are about, so what the judge's role is in determining guilt. And if you're that unwell that you can't do that, our law dictates that you're then unfit to stand trial.
At times, I saw a person that was deteriorating. She became more unkept, disheveled. She had issues with regards to outbursts in the courtroom. She had physical issues where she would claw at her face. These were all in the public courtroom that I could see. There was also other times that she would be calm and composed. It was a situation where I would go to court and never know what I would get.
The forensic psychiatrist determined that, in his opinion, she was unfit to stand trial. But the forensic psychiatrist isn't the one that makes the decisions, they just provide a report. So that report goes in front of a judge, and in this case it was a judge and a jury. The jury in this matter heard the report and heard the evidence of the forensic psychiatrist, heard my submissions, heard the submissions of the Crown, and decided that Ms. Possessor was in fact unfit to stand trial. And a treatment order was made requiring Ms. Possessor to be sent to hospital where she would be treated for her mental illness. She's returned to Vanier Centre for Women, which is the detention center. She's kept there until they have a bed available at CAMH, the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health, which is where she was ordered to be transferred for treatment. The bed was available, I think, quite quickly. At that point, she was in the security unit at CAMH with, I think, practically no privileges at first, and she was provided with treatment in order to make sure that they were complying with the treatment order.
It took almost 3 years. According to the eventual hospital report, she was in and out of various facilities, underwent numerous interviews, fluctuated in her willingness to take medication.
She was diagnosed with schizophrenia, but she was treated with antipsychotic medication, and she started to improve. It was definitely an evolution in terms of her mental health, because she went from severely unwell to slightly less unwell to closer to her baseline. She hadn't fully recovered, but she was certainly able to recognize why we were there, what the circumstances were, and to engage in the process appropriately.
We have developing news from the courts tonight. Rohini Bisesar has been found fit to stand trial for murder.
It was a unanimous decision by the 12-member jury, who heard from one witness, forensic psychiatrist Dr. Ian Swayze. Swayze told the court that she is now fully intact, calling her focused, organized, rational, and coherent.
We're going to be seeking NCR, which is not criminally responsible. We're doing that on the basis that my client's suffering from a mental condition which robbed her of the ability to know that the reasonably foreseeable consequences of her actions were wrong.
Coming up, while Rohini was being made fit for trial, charges were once again upgraded, But will the Junor family get justice? Welcome back. Rosemary's parents desperately want their daughter's killer behind bars. But as the trial begins, the outcome remains uncertain. We now return to Marianne Demain and the senseless killing of Rosemarie Junor.
As Rohini Bisesar was undergoing treatment to get fit for trial, police were continuing to investigate the circumstances leading up to her attack on Rosemarie Junor.
She wasn't employed at that point. She would always go down to the financial district, and she had a particular coffee shop that she went to. She tried to network. That was a big thing for her, was to network, to move forward, to get a job. She wanted to get into the big business firms.
She would get up, she'd go to a gym. She would sit at the Starbucks doing work on resumes. So she thought that she was working on important things for herself, but really what she was writing and what she was doing in terms of the work was disorganized.
Then, days before the stabbing, that routine was derailed.
Somehow, and I don't know what was in her mind, and I can't possibly know what was in her mind, but from what I understand from the psychiatric report, she engages in this sort of line of conduct where she is going to stab someone. She's going to do something with a knife. She's so disorganized that she can't go to her home and get a knife. She can't go to the store around the corner and get a knife. She gets on a train, goes to a dollar store, picks up a knife.
It was a typical paring knife from Dollarama. We were able to find out that that had occurred a few days before. I actually went to the dollar store and purchased a $3 paring knife. That's the exact weapon that was used in this offense. By the time we were made aware of the location of the store and the date that she had done that, the video surveillance from that location had already been written over or destroyed. But I was comfortable that this was consistent with her pattern.
A $3 knife was why Rohini now stood trial for first-degree murder instead of second.
Why she engaged in that was the question, right? That's the million-dollar question. We don't know why, other than what we understand from the forensic psychiatry and what was in her mind when this happened. And based on all of that, the opinion was developed by the experts, not by me, that she was in fact not criminally responsible because she was not able to appreciate the nature or quality of her actions or to know that what she was doing was wrong. And that was the position that was put before the court.
I was enraged very much. You hear that the girl is complaining that she has this nano thing she's hearing, and she has these things that people are talking to her, and so you're like saying, oh my God, this person's gonna claim or get off for this now because she's claiming she's crazy.
There are a number of lawyers who will counsel their clients who are unwell not to go the NCR route because it's not an easy way out.
For instance, if somebody's charged with, say, stealing some food from a grocery store, and the voices have told them to do this, the consequences of a guilty finding may be fairly mild. So you go to court, you get found guilty, there's a sentence, you pay your debt to society, and then you're a free person again. You can regain your place in community. If you end up in the forensic system, there's no automatic exit. You have to be found not a significant risk to the safety of the public. And for a lot of people, that may be difficult and may take years, if not decades.
Only 1% of all cases that go before the court are found to be NCR. So it's a very small percentage. It's a very hard thing to prove.
Because you have to rely on records that were created contemporaneous to the offense. And it really requires psychiatric detective work to kind of understand what was going on in the person's mind at that time. Fitness to stand trial assessments can take as short as half an hour to an hour, but the criminal responsibility assessments take an extended period of time, often up to 60 days to complete.
We didn't try to contradict the evidence of Ms. Bisesar's actions. We really did not suggest that, oh, she didn't do it, you need to prove that she did it. That wasn't the goal. We knew exactly what happened. What we didn't know was why it happened, and that's what the forensic psychiatry team filled in for us. Why did this happen? Why did this otherwise pro-social person, highly educated person, somehow engage in this conduct? The reason we can't call it a murder is because murder is a technical term for a person who deliberately causes someone to die. When a person is found not criminally responsible, it's definitely a homicide, but it's not a murder.
Justice John McMahon delivered his oral verdict this morning and found that Rohini Bisesar was not criminally responsible.
I understand that people can be or become mentally ill, but that shouldn't excuse you, or that shouldn't allow you to get away with murder.
McMahon said the tragic stabbing of an innocent young woman can only be described as a senseless and motiveless killing. The bizarre nature of this killing makes no sense.
The court found that she had engaged in homicide, but that she did not have the ability to form the necessary intent to kill.
The judge telling the family that he wishes he could roll back the clock, not just for the Junor family, but also for Rohini Bisesar, who was suffering from a serious mental illness that was going untreated.
It was troubling because you always want to give a solid reason why this horrendous act happened, and I had none. I went through a process of seeing her on video commit a terrible offense where she appeared composed and calm, well-dressed, a normal community member, to a person that I saw deteriorate during the whole court process. And all I could say to the family is that this individual won't be held responsible, won't go to prison because of a mental health issue.
Coming up, after taking the life of an innocent woman, will Rohini Bisesar once again be allowed to live freely? Welcome back. With her schizophrenia in remission, Rohini Bisesar wants to rejoin the world at large. But can the public trust she won't kill again? We return now to Marianne Demain and the conclusion of the senseless killing of Rosemarie Junor.
She's consenting to treatment. She's not fighting that treatment. She understands that she requires treatment, and she understands that it's a lifelong illness.
Bisesar will remain at the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health on a secure wing for women until an Ontario Review Board hearing over the next 90 days, when they will conduct a risk assessment.
She's sick, yes. Look after her. But leave her inside there. Give her the sentence. Don't let her out, because it will be a danger to the public outside.
A ruling of not criminally responsible is not without consequences.
Prior to our current legislation, when an individual obtained a not guilty by reason of insanity, they were acquitted. That's not the case now. The reality is that individuals who obtain verdicts of NCR end up with their liberty curtailed longer than had they been convicted, mostly. So to think that anyone got away with anything is really a profound misunderstanding of the system.
At this point, the person is no longer before the criminal justice system. They're remanded to the hospital system. They won't be in a cell. They won't be handcuffed. They'll be on a hospital range. That's called secure custody, and so essentially they're not allowed to leave. They'll be diagnosed, they'll be treated. Treatment might be involuntary, meaning forced upon them.
Patients in the forensic psychiatric system are also under the jurisdiction of the Ontario Review Board, commonly referred to as the ORB.
And it is an independent administrative tribunal, and it's staffed, though, by often judges from the criminal justice system, doctors, professors, and other people involved with mental health throughout their career. Each and every year, someone who is under secure custody, they have a right to counsel, their lawyer attends with them, and they argue whether or not it's safe for that particular person to return to the community.
For many individuals, they do indeed progress from maximum secure to medium secure to minimum secure to conditional discharge to an absolute discharge. That isn't a prescribed waterfall flow. It's the path that many individuals take as they become more stable and is not an inevitability.
A GTA family feeling victimized all over again.
My heart is breaking. That's the way how I feel, and my family is the same thing too.
They've just learned that Rohini Bisesar is now allowed to enter the community unescorted and live in the community in supervised accommodation.
Leave her inside there. Don't let her out.
Leading up to the trial, she understood that her actions caused Ms. Junyor's death. But at the same time, she also understood that she was a victim of her own mental health, and but for her mental health, this never would have happened. And it's a hard thing for people to reconcile.
As a secure patient, Rohini Bisesar's lawyer said his client worked hard to progress through the system.
The programming that's offered in the secure range wants to rehabilitate in terms of helping people to recover. They have programs that allow you to reintegrate into the community only after you've proven compliant. And that's what Ms. Bisesar has done. It starts slow. It starts as supervised. Day passes. You start to take small trips out into the community. Eventually the person is given passes to the community unsupervised. The goal is that they're going to return to the community and they're going to live independently because they're going to be well.
What happens if everybody disappears? Will this person continue to take their medication? So just the fact that they're well, and just the fact that they say they're going to take medication, no board is going to release that person. And that's why people are off in the system for a long period of time. And the other thing that the board does, with the hospital of course, is ensure that the person is knitted into follow-up in the community.
The recidivism rates for people subject to our jurisdiction is very low compared to probation or parole. The recidivism rates there. And when you filter it down to violent crime, I think it's less than 0.6%.
Over her years in hospital, Rohini successfully gained more freedoms and trust.
As she continues to show signs of recovery, she begins to have the opportunity to access the community supervised, the opportunity to make short trips to the community unsupervised. She must prove herself at each and every point to earn the trust of her doctors.
She's also been through 3 ORB reviews.
Last year, because she's so advanced, I advocated for a conditional discharge. I think she's earned it. The hospital disagreed. They thought it was too early.
A relief for the Junor family, who every year have the opportunity to present a victim impact statement to the board.
We're missing our loved one, she's gone. We need them to understand that this person did commit a crime. Whether or not they said she wasn't in her right mind or not, but she did commit a crime. She killed someone, and we want them to know that, no, we don't want this person out on the streets. Yes, there is mental health issues, but to what point do we take this to where every day people get stabbed, people get killed, run down by cars, snowplow machines, cut off somebody's head, and yet still these people are out there on the streets or they're not getting the help they need. I hope that by me or other people who are doing this, it gets out to the public or it gets out to whoever it needs to for them to take heed. It's going to come more and more and more again in the future. It's going to happen if they don't curb it right now.
Can we stop some of these offenses from happening? Sure, we could if everybody got treated. But also, it's a situation where the person that needs the treatment doesn't recognize how sick they are.
The number of times I've heard about people who've been knocking on the door, and I mean that figuratively, sometimes literally, asking for care, not being able to get care. The fact that we have wait lists that go into months and months. The fact that our emergency rooms are waiting rooms, not emergency rooms, for people who need help. So we need to invest in mental health care in this country. And the hope is ultimately that we have less of a forensic system because more people get treated when they need help, rather than things escalate to the point where their mental illness gets out of control and offense occurs.
What people may wonder most is, what happens when someone receives an absolute discharge but ends up deteriorating again?
That will generally fall under the Consent and Capacity Board. So what will happen is a person will be brought to hospital on a Form 1 or a Form 2, where they are held in the hospital for 72 hours for observation. And if necessary, they'll be put on what's called a Form 3, which is to keep them there for another 2 weeks. During that time, they will be assessed as to their mental status, whether they've been receiving treatment, accepting treatment, etc. Assuming that they're found incapable of consenting to their own treatment, they can be treated against their will when a substitute decision maker consents to treatment on their behalf. So there is a process in place for people, and this doesn't have anything to do, by the way, with the ORB or even criminality.
We contacted Rohini Bisesar's lawyer to see if she had anything to say. In response, she wrote this letter.
I will forever be sorry for the dreadful harm I caused to Ms. Rosemarie Junor, sorrow I caused to her family, friends, loved ones, and the concern I caused to the community at large. I would like to explain to the public that the symptoms of my illness were not obvious to me, nor were they apparent to an outside observer until, as in this case, it was too late to prevent harm to an innocent person. I want the public to know that it was a truly terrifying experience for me as an ill person. I hope they understand that I was not capable of thinking or behaving rationally at the time of the offense as a result of my untreated illness. My actions were not intentional. Schizophrenia is not curable, but it is treatable. I take medications for my illness, which has been successful in controlling and eliminating the symptoms of schizophrenia. I have utilized every resource available and applied myself to my recuperation with the same diligence and attention to detail I have employed in my past academic studies and career. I wish nothing more than to return to my previous role as a positively contributing member of the community. I hope that the community of Toronto will give me that chance. I am ready.
This person is living their life out there on the streets, coming back out, and she's living her life. My sister is dead and gone. Rest her soul. My mom would forgive her because she's a godly person. For her, she would say that. But for me, I can't. My brother and my sister, we get together now. We're more closer now. We always remember her. You know, we have drinks and we have a little glass for her because she likes to take her shot. For her, I know that she would want us to be happy. Just be happy. Enjoy your life. Be free. But be careful.
On April 24th, 2023, the Ontario Review Board held another hearing to assess Rohini Bisesar's progress. She was granted a conditional discharge. She is free to live where she chooses, but must keep the local mental health authority updated on her address. All travel must be approved. In addition, she must take all medication and treatment as prescribed and not possess any weapons. For the Junor family, the annual reviews are a constant reminder of their loss. Her brother Richard feels it particularly hard. He says, knowing Rosemarie's plans, he feels certain he would have been an uncle by now. All the more sad when he remembers the little sister he used to walk to school. He and his family visit Rosemarie's gravesite several times a year and talk about what might have been. I'm Anthony Robart. Thank you for joining us tonight on Crime Beat. Want more episodes of Crime Beat? Listen to the Crime Beat podcast now for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast. And for past episodes of Crime Beat, go to the Global TV app Visit globaltv.com or check out our Crime Beat YouTube page.